Move over, high-quality sharpener. We've got work to do. An Amazon seller wanted to send me a free Ruxin Pro 9 to review, and I told her I'd already done that and it was garbage, so she sent me this one instead, the Beckire. I told the seller the review would be honest and published no matter how I felt about it, and she agreed as long as I put a link to her Amazon page. So here we go. The instruction manual is written with decent English grammar, short and sweet, but no info about the included stones. Speaking of, there they are, 6-inch Edge Pro style stones on plastic backers. They go to 3,000 grit, but let's not get too excited. It's a simple system that assembles in about a minute. The table clamp doesn't fit my work table, so I have to move into the kitchen. Now this knife clamp has a single jaw that tightens with a lever on its bottom. It's actually a very effective clamp. The stone holder can clamp 2 stones at once and inserts into a guide ball that's loosely attached to the stand that wiggles a lot. I suspect it's a feature rather than a flaw, relieving stress on the clamp that would otherwise hold it to the vertical rod so it doesn't loosen easily. There's no limiter screw on the back of the sharpening arm rod to keep it from sliding out of the eye during use, which it did several times for me. The stone holder spring is quite strong, and the corners and edges on the back end holder are very sharp. It's uncomfortable to use. Fine. Let's set our sharpening angle and we'll sharpen a knife and see how it goes. The instruction manual doesn't tell us how to treat the stones, but one of the company's instructional videos shows them being briefly soaked for preparation. This would be typical of a soaking stone, submerging them until the bubbling stops, which doesn't take long in this case. Now on this first knife, the 150 grit greenstone holds up pretty well, but on subsequent knives, after repeated short soaks, it's going to have some problems. Yeah, here we go. The vertical rod is loosening from the base, which was sort of expected under the circumstances. I've been down this road before, so I'm just going to head off future problems by supergluing it in now. And since the sharpening rod insert is already loosening, I'm going to go ahead and glue that in place too. So after going all the way up to 3,000 grit on these stones, we have a knife that cuts about like 1,000 grit to me, and the polish looks like maybe even less than that. Let's sharpen a few more knives, then I'll give you some pros, cons, and final thoughts.
One thing I'm noticing, I'm not sure why I just now picked up on this, but when you flip it side to side, you have to clamp it in exactly the same spot. This clamp doesn't turn, the knife turns, and it reclamps, and so going back and forth, you're going to have to do something to draw on your knife where to place the clamp exactly, going side to side so that you're sharpening the exact same angle in the same way and the knife is oriented the same and all that. Or you can go all the way up in grit on one side, raise a burr and go all the way up in grit, then flip it and go all the way up in grit on the other side.
This is knife 3 or 4 and the green stone is disintegrating. The others held up fine, so I'm not sure what the deal is. I've seen some other green stones fall apart, so maybe it's something with the green binder, I don't know. At any rate, when we measure it out, it lost just over 0.5 millimeter after light use on 5 knives. It did a just fine job sharpening these knives to what is about 1,000 grit.
So as effective as this clamp is, and it holds things very tight, it relies on this plastic lever down here rotating up and then creating tension here and locking in place. And this is cheap plastic, and this is cheap plastic. You can tell by feeling. It's a matter of time before this stuff wears out.
Something else to consider is that this single jaw clamp can't really hold on to knives with significant tapered spines like this one. Pros and cons, then final thoughts. Pros, it's solid, well-made base, well-designed clamp. Number 2, it's compact. It's got a small footprint. Number 3, no frills means less opportunity for stuff to break or malfunction. It sounds like I'm being cheeky here, but in this price range, when bells and whistles are included, they tend not to work and or fail. So I think keeping it simple is probably a good choice here. Next, it takes the ubiquitous probably 5 and 6 inch Edge Pro style stones. Cons. The base rod and sharpening rod loosened frequently and had to be superglued in place. Fortunately, this is an easy fix and the unit worked well afterwards. The clamp lever is made of cheap plastic and it sort of worries me. Number 3, the single jaw clamp has trouble securing longer blades, which tend to bend at the tip if they are thin, and heavily tapered spines just can't really be secured. Number 4, the sharpening arm is too short and lacks travel limiters. Number 5, the stone holder has a strong spring and sharp corners that make it painful to use. Number 6, as expected, the included water stones are quite bad. The green one has disintegration syndrome. Although the stones say they go up to 3,000 grit, the visual polish and performance here is 1,000 grit or less. Well, then what are my final thoughts? The company is an Amazon retailer who says they offer an 18-month worry-free warranty through their Amazon store page. As it comes out of the box, the system might be okay for someone needing to sharpen a half dozen kitchen knives a couple times a year and isn't afraid to use some super glue to keep things moving along. It might also work for anyone who's willing to accept the limitations of a single jaw clamp and spend money on better stones. What would I do personally? Well, I guess I would consider the system at around $20, $25, buy a set of 3 diamond stones off Gritomatic for $30, super glue the loose parts, file down the corners on the stone holder, and maybe call it a day. That's sort of where I would find value in this thing at those sort of price points and making those alterations. If you sharpen long, thin knives or blades with significant tapers, this probably is not a great system for you, regardless of what you do to it. You're going to wish you just learned to sharpen by hand on some stones. Those are my thoughts. Take them or leave them. Have a good one.